Hey there, how's it going? If you can't tell from the games I make, I have a lot of love for the look and feel of what would now be considered retro video games. I'm old enough that when I was growing up we just called them video games. My peak gaming years were during the NES and SNES eras, and I kind of fell out of video games for a while around the time the 3D consoles came out. I was busy with other activities, and my gaming moved over into board games and TCGs like Magic the Gathering. And it mostly stayed like that until about 10 years ago when I got really into PC indie games. And one of the things that drew me in is I just love the pixel art aesthetic. It just hits that spot for me that says video game. Ever since I got into making games, I've made a lot of pixel art to put in those games, but I rarely find myself ever making art for the sake of just making something. I'm always making art to go into something else, and I rarely ever do fan art of other people's properties, unless I'm putting it on a monkey. So when Goodgis proposed an art collaboration where we recreate each other's games in our own styles, I was totally in. To add a little bit more to it, we're both going to make 2 images. One will be an image from the project the other is working on, and for a bit of fun and nostalgia, we'll each choose a game screenshot from a classic NES game for the other to recreate. And this worked out perfect for me. I've been trying to do more pixel art lately because practicing is just how I learn. And speaking of learning, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators to improve their skills. I always say as humans, we have an inherent need to make things, and it's really important to help us grow as people. Whether you're into game design, photography, animation, illustration, music production, and so much more, Skillshare's got you covered. And there's something for everyone of all skill levels, whether you're a beginner that's just starting out or an expert just looking to discover some new tips and tricks. Skillshare is curated specifically for you to learn in the most enjoyable way possible. With no ads, members have the ability to explore any topic with new classes launching all the time. Recently, I've been digging in to improve my video editing abilities thanks to a Skillshare original, Video Editing in DaVinci Resolve, 4 Essential Post-Production Techniques by Oliver Ostrolago. I've been using Resolve to make these videos for over a year now, and I'm learning so many tips to help improve my quality and workflow that I would have never known otherwise. I'm finally understanding the Fusion tab, which opens up so many possibilities with different effects, tracking, masking, and compositing techniques. With how easy Skillshare makes it, there's no better time than now to start learning something new. And as a special offer, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so you can start exploring your creativity today. So Goodgis and I are recreating some screen grabs in our own styles. For me, that usually means a base size of 32 by 32 pixels with more cartoonish coloring and lighting. Let's begin with the classic NES game Goodgis picked for me. And the game I have to recreate is Earthbound. Okay, I have to be honest here because I'm sure a lot of you are like, yes, I love this game. I've never played it. I've never really been much of an RPG guy, and especially back when I was a kid, I definitely didn't have access to this game. This is one that I have a bit of experience with in terms of seeing videos online and hearing people talk about it. I've just never played it myself. So if I get any info wrong, I'm sorry. But luckily, I don't need to know much about the actual game to redraw the sprites. So Earthbound, also known as Mother 2 in Japan, was released here in North America in June of 1995. While not the biggest success on release, Earthbound has garnered a huge cult following and is still a beloved game to this day. So let's hope I don't screw it up. I actually started working on this one live on my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/Vimlark, shameless plug. And I began by updating Ness because I always like to start with the main character because that drives the look for the rest of the scene. I also try not to reinvent the wheel as much as I can, so I began with the base character that I made a while back for my Ludum Dare game, which funnily enough was based off of a sprite from Link to the Past, so the Nintendo influence comes full circle. I did my best to translate the Ness look and feel, but add in some cute touches like larger eyes that I really enjoy making with my characters. To stay more authentic, I sampled colors directly from the original screen grab, but I did add some shades and tints here and there as I saw fit. The nice thing about modern pixel art is we don't have to be beholden to all the restrictions that were around in the 80s and 90s. Starting with my older base sprite did hurt me a little bit until I realized the issue was the original NES sprite is a lot more straight on in perspective than the top-down one which was referenced from Link to the Past. So a quick removal of the head and some reworking of the body sorted that out pretty nicely. The next character I pulled was the coil snake, which I want to turn around because there's no fun in seeing the back of it. It actually took me a little while to find a decent reference sprite, but once I did, I was able to scale it up by 50% and I got to cleaning. When it comes to recreating something, sometimes I'll draw it from scratch, other times I'll start with it as a base and draw on top. Maybe it has to do with my background as a photographer and a digital retoucher. I really enjoy taking the base image and reworking on top of it until it looks different. Nothing too out of the ordinary here. I cleaned up the shapes, added some detail, and gave it some nice big eyes. After the snake came the crow, and I don't know how significant this character is to the story in the game, but I can say from a redrawing perspective, this character was a pain in the butt. It has an oddly shaped silhouette, and the angle of the glasses was just an absolute nightmare in pixel art. I spent way more time on this crow than I would like to admit, but in the end, I think it came out pretty well. It took a fair amount of perseverance and just a lot of fiddling to finally get it to look the way I wanted. With the characters finished up, it's time for the hard part, the environment. I began upscaling the whole image by 50%, which when you do that to pixel art makes the whole thing look like just a total mess. That actually helps me because I'm now able to go in and go over the lines, clean everything up, and add in a bunch of details and things that didn't exist before. For some places that's pretty straightforward, like on the paneling of the house. I added in the straight lines and some shading. But for other areas like the door, the higher resolution makes it take a little bit more play. The door was a little tricky for a while, and then I realized I just had it too small and it looked weird in perspective to the rest of the house. Moving on to the garden, the mailbox, the flowers, the paving stones were all pretty simple. Mostly just cleaning up the shapes and outlines and doing some copy and pasting. And moving further from the house, next up we have the fence. And while it looks like it went really smooth here, I had to redo the side-facing fence so many times to get it to look right, it's ridiculous. But really, it was just a lot of draw, undo, draw, undo, draw, undo, and it wasn't very interesting, so I cut it out to save you the boredom. Adding in some shadows and the planter in front of the fence really helped anchor the whole thing to the scene and made it all fit together nicely. I've always struggled with foliage, so I didn't want to change the trees too much. I mostly just cleaned them up, made them look a lot nicer, refined all the lines and shapes. Also, for a game like this, you see these trees all over the place, so their look and style is implanted in a lot of people's minds, so I didn't want to veer too far away from that. And last but not least, we have the ground. The grass was of course really simple, just a couple of lines that then get copy and pasted all over the place. I tried adding some variety by making varying patterns, and it just didn't quite look right. So to keep it more in line with the original, I used a repeating pattern to give it definition, but I dropped the opacity to make it not stand out quite as much and just make it blend into the scene a little better. Then I placed my characters roughly where they are in the screenshot, and this is my redraw of Earthbound. Overall, I think it came out pretty well, and I'm pleased with it. The second image we'll be recreating is from Goodgis' game Dewdrop Dynasty. It's a super adorable game with a really cute art style. Funnily enough, the game at one point actually had a higher resolution, but Goodgis redesigned it for aesthetic reasons as well as ease of creation. So since it's our job to recreate it and we don't have to animate it, let's put some more pixels back in, what do you say? As before and always, I begin with the main character because that's what I use to dictate everything else. The main character for this game is a bee without wings carrying a gun. I created a body shape that I liked, which is a bit different from the original, but definitely more in line with my character styling. I added a gun to its hand and then played with the pose for a little while. I fought with the legs for a little bit, but in the end I opted for a more retro style legs out jumping kind of pose that you tend to see in classic video games. Double outlines are a thing I really like to do for player characters, so I chucked a white outline over the other outline, and I got to work on the Mushroom King, or Queen. I don't actually know, but the one thing I can say that it's a pretty fun guy. I'm sorry, I'll show myself out. I began by blocking out the basic shapes. I like to do the stage in red for no real reason other than I just like it. It's just something I've been doing for a while. I think it helps the silhouette stand out a little bit better for my eyes and my perception, but I honestly couldn't say for sure. At this point, it's more of a habit than anything else. I roughed in the eyes and the undersides of the mushroom caps. Then I take that whole layer, drop the opacity down, and use that as my guide to draw on top of. Once again, I'm pulling colors from the base image and adding shades and tints wherever I need. As per usual, I gave it big cute eyes and then had a fun little struggle with the crown. Next it was time to shade, and to get a little texture in, I decided to go for something that I don't do a whole lot of, which is dithering. Dithering is a pixel art technique where checkerboard or other repeating patterns are used to create depth when using limited color palettes. It's also just a really fun aesthetic that I don't do much of because it's a real nightmare to animate. But since this is a still image, let's have some fun. With the main two characters done, it's time to move on to the environment. The large mushroom platforms were fun to put together, and the underside decoration was really fun to make. Then came the terrain, which, like the fences in the previous image, I had to redo many times. I eventually opted to add a border around the ground with a repeating pattern that mimics the original one behind it. That's all the big pieces done, now it's just time for the small details. The player is shooting in the original, so I made a bullet and muzzle flash. I added the small mushrooms and grass to the ground. And for the UI, I threw in the pixel art heart as a bit of me. I use this heart everywhere and I absolutely love it. Below that, I added the little bee indicators. And then I added a little bit more details to the mushrooms and the ground, as well as adding a pattern to the background. The base game has a solid black background, which gives nice contrast to the rest of the game, and I enjoy that, but I wanted to add a little bit more to it. So I added a bit of a rocky texture pattern and pulled the opacity way down to just give a hint of it. I had an absolute blast making these, and I'm pretty happy with the results. As an artist, there will always be things that I want to change and things that I don't love as much as others, but at a certain point you just have to call a piece done. I feel that both of these images represent my style of pixel art pretty well, and it was fun to work with properties that aren't my own creations for once. If you've enjoyed this, please like and leave a comment. I'd definitely be interested in doing more fan art type videos in the future if people are interested. Also, if you haven't already, you should go check out Goodgis' video where they redesigned monkeys with guns in their style, as well as the classic game I chose for them, Kid Icarus. There's a card up top and a link in the description to go check it out. Seriously, they came out so cool, I absolutely love them and you're not going to want to miss it. Thank you all very much for watching, and thank you to Goodgis for doing this little challenge with me. Don't forget to check out the sponsor of this video, Skillshare, by clicking the link in the description. You can learn new skills as well as help out this channel, and don't forget the first 1,000 subscribers get a month free. I would also like to give an extra special thank you and shout out to my amazing Patreon supporters, especially Aaliyah Cam, Clone13, Cortland Masam, David Scott, Nightfall, Jed, Kevin Halgau, Kormai, MLK, Matzi Makes, Nazar Salim, Salty Pretzel, Scott Hansen, Soapy Gnome, Straight Up Gruntled, and Warren Stephen Rose. You're all awesome people, and I truly appreciate the support. If you want to get into contact with me, the best place is honestly my live stream at twitch.tv/Vimlark. I'm currently streaming Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and I would absolutely love to chat with you. Or you can join our Discord community with a lot of other fantastic people. I really hope you have a wonderful day or evening, and I will talk with you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Later.